I think the second tremendous change that we have seen in modern society's workplace is the welcoming of women into the workplace. Now, I'm sure that there are many women in the audiences around the world that are listening to this program, so you can politely cheer when I say this. But I can tell you from my travels and my work with corporations that the inclusion of women, their talent, their innovative ideas, their brain power, has magnified the success and growth of organizations. Diversity is very important in today's society. And I'm not just referring to color or gender. I'm referring to the diversity of how we think, because to me, that's the ultimate gift that different people bring to an organization. And I think finally, probably the greatest difference between today's practice of business and the practices 200 years ago is our ability to communicate and to deliver products in a global marketplace. 200 years ago, it would be very difficult for a company to ship its products from one side of Brazil to the other, or from Cuba to the United States, or vice versa. Today, that happens millions of times in transactions.
Thank you. Our next question is from the Dominican Republic. It is from Codatel in the capital of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic.
To ask the speaker, in your opinion, in your experience, is the leader born? Are you born a leader, or are you made a leader? Can you become a leader, or are you born one?
Well, today, the question is, are you born a leader, or are you made a leader? I suppose in today's society, you could even clone leaders. We're working on that technology in the biomedical field. But seriously, I think it's a little bit of both. After all, we're the byproduct of our mother and fathers, our biological parents, and we do inherit certain genetic traits that either help us or, I think, hurt us in terms of our willingness to step up to the plate and assume the role of being a leader. I think specifically today, it's more important that leaders are made. And here's how you make a leader. Number one, I think companies and organizations have to assume the responsibility of mentoring their best and brightest people. So that would be step one. Secondly, I think it's very important that companies and organizations invest in their people. And I'm talking about giving them the tools, the education, the training, so that they can continuously improve their performance and learn how to do the job better. And finally, I'm a strong proponent of encouraging companies to move their people around and give them different exposure in terms of responsibilities in different parts of the organization. So it may be customer service, it might be sales, it may be manufacturing, finance, all the key areas of an organization, so that you develop the holistic leader.
Thank you. Now, probably our last question for this question and answer session is from Ecuador. It is from okay, we lost the call. Let's go ahead and we'll wait for the next question and answer session, so call back if you get a chance. Thank you for your questions. Let's now move to the second module of our program, where Mr. Hinton will discuss a self-assessment process for organizations and the standards that guide organizations to performance excellence through the actual Malcolm Baldrige Award.
Welcome back. In 1954, a very prominent business professor by the name of Dr. Peter Drucker, who has been called the founding father of the science of management by the Los Angeles Times newspaper, Dr. Drucker wrote in his first book entitled The Practice of Management, and I'll quote, "The purpose of a business is to create a customer," unquote. I share this with you because the greatest failure of leadership is that leaders forget that their primary job is to create an environment by which their organization can acquire and maintain customers. It's easy to get distracted, and this is why self-assessments are an important tool for any organization. They help leaders stay focused on their number one priority. From a textbook perspective, I suppose leadership is a fairly simple process. However, to put the principles and concepts into action requires a great deal of skill, finesse, and perseverance on the part of a leader. And this is why it's important for you to be able to launch processes and systems that will help you acquire and maintain your customers. At the same time, the leader must be perceptive enough to realize that while he or she is trying to acquire and maintain customers, there are other well-intentioned but misguided people in that same organization who are busy making policies and rules and procedures that alienate customers and prevent them from doing business with your company. It's a constant battle leaders must wage, unfortunately. But there is a bright side to all of this. One tool that leaders can use to keep their employees and organizations focused is the organizational self-assessment. This self-assessment I like to use is a 10-step process based on the Malcolm Baldrige Award criteria. If you're not familiar with the Baldrige Award criteria, I'll provide you with a website address shortly where you can download the criteria at no cost. Let me take a moment now and quickly introduce you to the 7 categories of the Malcolm Baldrige Award criteria. I think you'll find that the Baldrige Award criteria, as well as your own national award for performance excellence in your country, is an excellent tool to perform a self-assessment. It is also a very effective template to begin your journey to long-term growth and profitability. The 7 categories in the Baldrige criteria are: number 1, leadership; 2, strategic planning; 3, customer and market focus; 4, the use of information and the analysis of data; number 5, having a human resource focus; number 6, process management; and last, number 7, business results. Now let me just add something here on business results. Business results in the Baldrige Award criteria comprises 45% of the total score. So performance-based leadership is extremely important, especially in light of achieving business results. When the Customer Relations Institute is hired to consult with companies and organizations on how to achieve performance excellence, we use a special graphic to describe how the process works. We refer to this graphic as the sequence of Baldrige items, and we'll show this to you in just a moment. Let me explain this graphic because it takes the 7 categories of the Baldrige Award out of order. But there's a very good reason for doing this. And frankly, it comes back to Dr. Drucker's statement about the purpose of a business, to create a customer. As you can see now, the process really focuses on the customer. There are 3 important questions you need to ask in order to successfully assess your performance according to the Baldrige Award criteria. And those 3 questions are, number 1, first, do you understand who your customers are and your current market conditions? This is why we suggest that you must have inputs that describe customer and market knowledge. And incidentally, within the context of the Baldrige Award criteria, this item appears in section 3.1. Secondly, is your leadership committed and engaged in this process of continuous improvement? In order to answer this question affirmatively, your leadership must have in place a strategic plan, which is category 2.0, the capability to use information and analyze data, and that's category 4.0, and the ability to determine your customer satisfaction requirements, which is part of category 3.2b. Now the third question, finally, do you have in place a systematic approach to achieving your desired results? To successfully answer this question, your organization must have in place the following key components. A human resource focus, and that's category 5.0. A process management approach to help you define what to do and how to do it, and that's category 6.0. And a customer relationship plan in order to successfully manage and relate to your customers, and that's category 3.2a. Only when these key items are in place is it possible for you to achieve your desired organizational, financial, and customer results, which, by the way, are shown on the chart as category 7, or business results. Now, let's turn our attention to performing an effective self-assessment. There's an old expression that says, what gets measured gets done. Another axiom along the same line says, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I think both of these old sayings are true and applicable to our next topic, which is self-assessments. The reason for conducting a self-assessment are both plentiful and obvious. Most organizations understand that the fastest way to improve their performance is to consistently measure their results. And in today's business environment, customers and competitors are driving a need to change. I cannot think of an industry that is not undergoing major changes as we speak. Even those organizations that are ranked among the best in their industries need to perform self-assessments in order to remain best-in-class businesses. In good times, you self-assess to stay healthy. In tough economic times, you self-assess your performance to find innovative ways to transform how you do business, just like Clark American Checks did in the early 1990s. Now, I will share with you the 10 steps for an organizational self-assessment. And for each step, I will discuss the purpose and the process that I recommend you use. So here we go. Number 1, identify the boundaries of the organization to be assessed. The purpose of this step is to ensure that all of the appropriate areas are included and that data and information are consistently collected from those areas throughout the self-assessment process. Also, this step ensures that self-assessment champions and team members are selected who are representative of the key assessment areas. Now, the process for this step is to determine if the self-assessment and the action plan, and I'll talk more about action plans in a minute, and the implementation of that action plan will cover the full organization, or will it cover a subunit, a division, or just a department? It's important to clarify what is included and what is not to determine what will be evaluated. The second step is to select your self-assessment champions. The purpose of this step is to identify at least 7 champions, or 1 for each category of the criteria, who will participate in preparing the organizational profile and the responses to the 7 category item questions. Now, in terms of process, I would encourage you to select champions with leadership and facilitation skills who have widespread knowledge of the organization. Champions with enthusiasm and criteria knowledge are assets in the self-assessment planning and action process. Step 3, decide on the format for and scope of your self-assessment and action plan. Now, the purpose of this step is to help you clarify expectations for what's to be accomplished and the resources needed to complete the task. Selecting a format to easily communicate the self-assessment results sets the stage for future steps. So, it's important to be able to communicate results of the self-assessment and implementation, and therefore that helps you in terms of your action plan that enables your organization to better achieve common purposes and goals. Now, the process for this step is to decide on the scope of the self-assessment and the format for capturing and communicating the assessment and action steps to follow. If you're just getting started, I recommend that you might only want to write an organizational profile, or you might decide to be a bit more ambitious and use portions of the Baldrige Award criteria. But regardless of what you decide to do in terms of the scope of your self-assessment, the format is still very important. You might decide on an oral discussion and report, or a written bulleted type of report, commonly referred to as an executive summary. Or you might require a full written application as used in the Baldrige Award evaluation process. But the fourth step requires now that senior leaders and champions prepare the organizational profile. As I've shared with you before, the organizational profile is a statement of your operating environment and what is relevant and important to your organization and its performance. It will help ensure a common understanding about what is important, the key influences on how your organization operates, and where your organization is headed. The organizational profile also will guide your self-assessment participants in selecting and sorting the most useful data and information for the assessment. Most organizations I work with start with the organizational profile and then they gradually progress to more detailed levels of self-assessments and action plans. I think one very important aspect to remember about the self-assessment process and in turn the organizational profile is this. Developing the organizational profile will help you identify gaps in information, areas where you may lack consensus, programs and processes where you have inconsistent or incomplete deployment, and this includes things such as communication breakdown or poor implementation throughout the organization. Now, from a process standpoint, I recommend that your senior leaders and champions review the questions in the Baldrige Awards organizational profile, which can be obtained by reading the Baldrige Awards criteria booklet, or by going on the internet and visiting the website that is now on your screen, and that's www.quality.nist.gov. What I encourage you to do in terms of step 4 is to prepare your responses to the organizational profile in 2 parts. First, respond to the organizational description. And secondly, respond to the organizational challenges. By doing this, you can develop a clear picture of your business, its people, products, and services, as well as the challenges facing your organization, both internally and externally. Now let's take a look at step 5. In step 5, practice self-assessment techniques with your 7 category champions using item 1.1 in the Baldrige Award criteria for performance excellence as your guide. You see, the purpose of this step is to help you practice the techniques and in so doing, help you learn how to use the criteria for self-assessment and actions. The process in this step is very important because the better you understand the criteria, the better your responses will be to it. So, here's what we recommend. Let's take the leadership category, and specifically, let's examine item 1.1 within the leadership category that's entitled Organizational Leadership. Now, this item deals with 2 key areas, and here they are. A, leadership direction, or let me add senior leadership direction, and B, organizational performance review. So, we recommend that your assessment champions collect information and data to outline their key processes in response to item 1.1. And then, based on the information collected by your assessment team champions, they will be better prepared to answer the questions asked in item 1.1. We also encourage your self-assessment team champions to describe approaches, include methods and measures, and explain how and where approaches are evaluated and improved in your organization. And then next, your team champions should identify gaps. Gaps are defined as incomplete responses in which the methods or measures, cycles of improvement and deployment are either unknown or unclear. To maintain a focus on what is relevant and important, we recommend you identify inconsistencies between your item 1.1 responses and what you identified as important in your organizational profile. So if I could just add here, it's very important to understand the organizational profile because that serves as the template for everything else that you're going to do, especially in your self-assessment. Okay, let's look at step 6. Your champions select category teams and they prepare a response for their assigned categories. In step 6, each champion will guide their team through the next few steps of the self-assessment and action planning process. Using the expertise of your team members, each team obtains data and information necessary to respond to their questions in their assigned category. So, for example, if you are the champion for category 3, which is customer and market focus, you would be responsible for tasking your team with responding to item 3.1, which is customer and market knowledge, and item 3.2, which is customer relationships and satisfaction. Of course, your answers, data, graphics, and information would become part of the self-assessment response. Now, in terms of process, we recommend that the champions select enthusiastic team members with knowledge of the organization's activities for that specific category or item, and then team members should be selected from different levels of the organization to ensure the broadest possible input. Also, we have found that it's very helpful to include customers and suppliers as members of your team to ensure external views are represented. And by the way, make sure every member of your team has the most current criteria booklet. One other footnote here. Whichever team has Category 7 entitled Business Results, the Category 7 team should work with the other 6 teams to link results to their approaches and deployment portion of the overall criteria. Let's move on to step number 7 now. Step number 7 is share responses among teams and finalize the findings. Identify key strengths and gaps in category responses. The purpose of this 7th step is to share responses so that all team members from all 7 categories arrive at a common understanding of what your organization is doing. The process we recommend for this step is for each team to formally present its findings to the other team members in a formal meeting. Teams clarify findings and add or delete information based on the broader expertise among all teams and linkages across all 7 categories and 18 items in the current Baldrige Award criteria. And then, following each team's report and an exchange of findings and information, the teams should reach consensus on the strengths and the gaps in each of those 18 items in the Baldrige Award criteria. Now also, the team should identify overall themes that cut across all categories. For example, in the Clark American case study that I discussed earlier, one theme that transcends all categories in their Baldrige Award application is what? First in service. So that's an example of the kind of theme that transcends the entire self-assessment process. Okay, let's look at step number 8. Prioritize your organization's key strengths and opportunities for improvement. The purpose of step number 8 is to help your organization develop an action plan that most effectively uses available resources. Now, the process we recommend is this. Using the organizational profile to maintain a focus on what is relevant and important, the teams decide on factors for prioritizing opportunities for improvement, or OFIs, or we like to refer to them as OFIs. Now, these would include any resource constraints. Decision factors could include linkage to strategic direction, perhaps the impact throughout the organization, cost, time to implement, and of course the availability of people to do the job. But once those factors are determined, the next step that teams take is to prioritize those opportunities for improvement and then identify those most important to include in the recommended action plan. Now, we've discussed the action plan